Hello and welcome to this presentation about the Schneider Electric SCADAPack 470 and 474 RTUs, which have been released earlier this month in October 2020. My name is Paul Cook and I'm a technical specialist here at Cymark. We're going to be taking a look at a number of areas today to do with the evolution of the SCADAPack itself. We came to be here today. Key features of the new 470 and 474s, take a look at the configuration tool, Remote Connect, and finally we'll look at some of the alternative migration paths you have for moving from the existing SCADAPack range to this new X70 range, which is what the 470 and the 474 are part of. These RTUs have been used extensively in the oil and gas sector as RTUs and as flow computers for many years, and also in the water and wastewater district. They've been used for many years successfully in many areas, such as running water treatment plants, pumping stations, and as it mentioned here, leak detection, water quality monitoring. Lots of areas where perhaps some low power, powerful automation is still required in these districts. The X70 RTU series has come about from a need to migrate forward from our existing standard SCADAPack, shown here on the left. The SCADAPack32 is part of our standard range, configured with the TelePay software or with the Isograph Workbench software. On the right is the E-series SCADAPacks, focusing more on the DMP3 protocol and only configured using the Isograph Workbench software. So moving forward, a decision was taken to combine the best elements of both of these RTUs into a new generation that we're calling the X70. And we're talking here about two of the new ones, part of the X70 series, the 470 and the 474. So as I mentioned, we have the standard E-series and the standard series, as well as the new X70 series of SCADAPacks. They're building on the existing platform, the benefits of Modbus and DMP support that we've been supporting in the standard E-series for many years. We've got a new programming environment. We've done a lot of work with enhancing the cybersecurity elements of these controllers. We have a number of modern Ethernet ports on these devices now that we need to be conscious of the traffic that can be coming in over the Ethernet port. All the controllers are straight out of the box Class 1 Div 2 hazardous area certified. So we've reduced the number of part numbers we have. And also, last but not least, the formerly known as ClearSCADA, the new GeoSCADA expert software, will be receiving a lot of significant enhancements to allow for better remote management and integration of these new X70 RTUs into a SCADA host. So ClearSCADA, or GeoSCADA expert as we're calling it now, should be your first choice when it comes to working with a SCADA host and the X70 RTUs. Let's take a look at an overview of the current range. So we have been for a while now had available three controllers in X70 range, the 570 shown here on the left, the 574 and the 575. So common to a number of different SCADAPack controllers, we take the controller board on the left and then we package in underneath one of two different expansion modules. So but essentially you're using the controller on the left with an expansion module packaged together into the same type of enclosure. So that's how we build up, or how we move from a 570 to a 574 or a 575, and also how we go from a 350 to a 357. The two new controllers that we have released in October are the 470 and the 474. You can see here from the look that the terminals have been relocated from the edge of the RTU onto a surface mount, which reduces the footprint of the controller. And what we've done here is reduce the number of serial ports available. We've changed the USB connection. We've got still have a large number of serial ports available. So the breakdown shown on the left here gives you an idea of the I/O counts that are available on the 470 RTU. And by adding in the brand new 6607 expansion module, packaging that together with the 470, we've come up with the 474 RTU, which adds in 8 counter inputs, which are shared with the existing 16 digital inputs. We've added in 10 digital outputs in the form of relay contacts, as well as supporting straight out of the box, always 2 analog outputs straight on the RTU. This is in contrast to in the past where the analog outputs have been an optional add-on that could have been added in and purchased separately. So now they are included with the purchase of the SCADAPack470 without needing to specify them separately. If the I/O counts on these RTUs are not sufficient to meet their application needs, as with all of our SCADAPacks, you can add in expansion modules. The limitation we have here with the X70 series is that we do not support all of the current 5000 series expansion modules with these RTUs. So you see here on the left a listing of the currently supported modules, and later this year in December, we will be adding 2 more expansion modules, including the RTD input module shown here on the left. So that will be enhancing the support for those. That will be a firmware change coming in December. And we've added in a brand new combination expansion module here, the 6607. Looking on the right, you can see that you can support up to 16 expansion modules, or 15 if you're using a 474, because the 474 already contains an expansion module. There are some limitations on the number of the new 6000 series modules that can be expanded and added into the I/O bus. We're still working with our 75-inch length local I/O bus that's been common now for quite some time with these systems. So when adding in expansion modules, you must be cognizant of if you need to add in a separate 5103 power supply to make sure that all the expansion modules that have been added onto a bus are getting sufficient 5-volt power supply through the bus. There's a calculation to be done. Please work with myself or our other specialists here at Cymark when you're considering putting together a system using expansion modules to make sure you don't need to add in one of those. Here we look at the new 6607 expansion module. It's essentially a 6000 series version of the 5607 expansion module, with the exception that we've got these 2 analog outputs now built in, and there's class 1 Div 2 hazardous certification built in. So we have reduced the number of part numbers that are available for the 6607. Let's take a look at some of the more key features as we see them on the 470 and the 474 series. The look of these devices is very similar and will be familiar to our E-series and standard customers. So we're looking at something that still uses the metal enclosure. Temperature range, as usual, is -40. Operating temperature range is -40 to +70. The boards are conformally coated and straight out of the box, class 1 Div 2. Running off 11 to 30 volts DC, and the 470 can consume as little as 2.8 watts of power. So you're definitely looking at a great off-grid solution for something that needs to run off solar power. And if you do need more reliable solar power off-grid solutions, we have our own EFOI range of methanol-based fuel cells to supplement the solar arrays with the batteries to make sure that you're getting very reliable off-grid power, and they partner very well with our SCADAPack RTUs. The DIN rail clamp at the back of the unit has been retained, so that helps to mount the unit itself onto a DIN rail. The 474 is the same sort of footprint as our existing 334 RTU, and the SCADAPack470 has the same footprint as the SCADAPack100. The SCADAPack100 was recently made obsolete. So if you're looking at using a SCADAPack100, we would be trying to talk to you about using the 470 RTU moving forward. New to this 470 and 474 is the inclusion of a battery switch. The controllers have a battery on board to maintain the program and configuration, if power is removed from the RTU, is capable of doing that for about 2 years continuously. From the factory, the old RTUs, this battery was installed and would begin to degrade if it had been perhaps warehoused for a while by ourselves. So the new units include this battery switch and a sticker on the cover to remind you to flip the switch when you get the unit to connect the battery to the circuit board and then begin to protect your program and application memory in the event of a power loss. We've got 2 Ethernet ports on these new SCADAPacks. Currently, they are independent, but there's scheduled for the same time in December when we support the newer expansion, the existing 5000 series expansion modules. We're going to be allowing the Ethernet ports to behave in a switched mode instead of an independent mode. The USB host port is still the same, but the USB device port has changed from a B to a C mode here. Not a big change, but it allows us to get a little bit more space onto the circuit board here. We're still supporting multiple serial ports off the board here through these RJ45 sockets or through these terminals. There are no dip switches on the board here to configure these devices. It's all handled now through the Remote Connect software and using software configuration. The USB host port can be used to plug in a drive for expanding the onboard memory when choosing to use the logging features and functionality of the SCADAPack. So you can actually plug a USB host device into here and have the files logged to this device, and then unplug the device and carry that away for further analysis. We've got a number of high-speed pulse counters on the board. We're supporting direct connection to up to 2 turbine pulse inputs. So the onboard amplifier is provided. They are built in, just 2 of those things, and a number of the other digital inputs can also behave as pulse counters, but they do not support the pulse. An onboard amplifier, you would need to use an external amplifier in those cases if you want to use the other digital inputs as counters. We've got 4 high-speed analog inputs on the 470, and because the 470 is packaged into the 474, those are carried over. As you can see here, you've got 2 settings to kind of give you different filtering and different accuracy when using those different filters. Communications, the SCADAPacks are supporting both protocols equally well, Modbus and DNP3. We've added in a Modbus scanner into the X70 RTUs. So instead of using our old Modbus TCP communication or Modbus RTU communication function box in code, the user can just use a mouse and a point-and-click environment to configure the scanning and polling of and reading and writing of information to devices on the Modbus serial or Ethernet links without, as it says here, without creating logic. We're still supporting Modbus store and forward routing, and these are the Modbus protocols that we're supporting through the Ethernet and serial connections. On the DNP side, we've gone through a level 4 DNP support, up from level 2 on some of the older SCADAPacks. We've also incorporated the SAV2 secure authentication support, and we'll have a look at that as to how that helps us further in later slides. Peer-to-peer communications between RTUs is supported with DNP3 as well as DNP3 routing. So the ability to send messages from a remote SCADAPack through this DNP device onto maybe a SCADA host. An optional licensed feature, if the architecture demands it, is the ability to use a SCADAPack470 as a data concentrator for DNP3 data. So this now means information comes up from an RTU and is stored in the main data concentrator RTU for then being passed on to a SCADA host. So the SCADA host does not have to poll or reach out to those other RTUs. They can all be done by going to the single one SCADAPack behaving as a data concentrator. A lot of work has been done improving the cybersecurity and resiliency of these RTUs to things like malformed packets coming in over the Ethernet port. So if there's a An unallowed service attack occurring, a lot of Ethernet traffic. The port is capable of filtering out this and not sending it on to the application code and potentially causing a slowdown in the RTU's execution or any problems with execution of program due to a storm of Ethernet traffic. And that's a good way of making sure that the control continues to happen under numerous different conditions. We've also included IP whitelisting and the ability to turn off various IP services with a view to trying to make sure that the attack surface for this RTU has been reduced as much as possible, as well as incorporating some password control and password locking access for use, which can be optionally turned off. The SAV2 secure authentication that's built in, and it's a licensed feature, allows for more messages to be transferred between a master and an RTU. Master could be a host or another RTU, to make sure through authentication and challenging responses to make sure that the commands that are being received by the RTU or coming back to the master are actually coming from the right device, so that no one has managed to infiltrate the network and is perhaps sending incorrect information between hosts and remote RTUs. So it's an optional feature and that can be used to further secure and ensure that better authentication is happening in communications between devices. Last but not least, these RTUs can be used as a flow computer. The real flow computer software, which has been used in the industry for many years, is now included with the RTU firmware. These SCADAPacks do not support the running of C programs at this time. We have plans for a new release of later in next year that will allow users the ability to run their own application code as well as the RTU. But because that's not going to take the form of a C program, the real flow computer has been built into the firmware of the RTU. And all that requires then is the downloading of the appropriate license file to the RTU to turn on the support for 3, 6, or 10 runs of any combination. So we've moved away from supporting liquid or gas flow runs, and we're just making available support for any type of flow run. And you just pick the quantity that you need. And as you see here, we go up to 10 runs on a single RTU. The data concentrator master functionality that I talked about earlier is another licensed feature and can be useful when trying to architect a DMP-based system. These RTUs, along as with the existing 574, 575, and 570, so all of the X70 series are configured using the new Remote Connect programming and configuration software. This software is using object names or tags to define the places where you're going to be storing your program code information. Each object can be given either a Modbus or DMP3 address in order to allow a remote host to extract the values that are contained within the object. So all the communications are between the RTU and a HMI or a SCADA host are done using DMP3 or Modbus protocol, not using the object name. The object use of the object names is limited to within the controller. We're supporting a great deal of export and import functionality through use of Excel. So the RTU configurations as well as logic code can all be exported and re-imported from Excel to speed program creation and object creation, as well as just reducing the need to do too many repetitive tasks within the Remote Connect software. Along with a Remote Connect, you get a Schneider Unity-based logic programming engine. So this is not isograph. It does support the IEC languages, but this is wholly owned and supported in-house by Schneider. So we're reusing the work that's been done in the software used to configure the higher-end Modicon PLCs now at the RTU level. So you're getting that power and familiarity if you've already used Unity working for you in the SCADAPack RTU. So support for these 5 different languages, and it's all included as a free download, and a free, no licensing is used or required to utilize this software. All the manuals are contained within the software's help system as well. So in order to gain access to the hardware manuals, you will need to install the Remote Connect software. It's just a free download from the Schneider site. The code in the controller has been compiled, but what that means is that we do actually support as well online modification of the objects and the logic code as well. So even though it's being compiled to execute as fast as possible, and we anticipate much faster execution times for code in these controllers compared to the standard SCADAPacks, they do actually get the added benefit of also being able to do online modifications as well. Some other nice features of the new application development environment is the support for multiple logic tasks. So code can be broken up into up to 4 separate tasks to be executed in a periodic or continuous manner, depending upon the needs of your application, as well as the ability to take the existing libraries and create your own library content, custom function blocks, as well as custom data types. So we're moving the RTU into the current 21st century expectations of the engineering teams that are working with devices these days. Lots of support provided for online debugging, and as I mentioned earlier, online logic modification is supported as well. Let's have a look at the existing SCADAPacks and where the new 470 and the 474 might fit in from an I/O comparison. So the existing 334 RTU maps very nicely into the new 474. So you can see here on the right, there's some of the differences. We're supporting more digital inputs, more digital outputs, more analogs, and as opposed to the 334 having optional analog outputs, we now provide 2 analog outputs right out of the box. So the 474 does replace the models listed here, the 312, 313, 314. These models were recently made obsolete by Schneider, and they cannot be purchased anymore. There are some minor I/O specification differences between the 334 and the 474, but in most respects, it's a very close match and a good RTU to migrate to. The 350 to 470 is compared here. So you can see the difference is that we're not supporting the capabilities of the 350 to support a 24-volt DC loop from the RTU here. So powering of analog inputs would need to be done separately if using the 470 compared to the 350 RTU here. But the nice thing about the 470 is that you are able to put in some extra expansion modules if necessary, but it's not intended to be a drop-in wiring replacement for this particular RTU. The 350 does have these combination digital input and digital output types of I/O on board, which is also not something we're supporting with the 470. But you can see in many other respects, there's a lot of similarities. The 357 to the 474 is compared here. You can see now that we're missing out the combination I/O, because to get a 357, you take a 350 RTU and add in an expansion module, and there are a number of different expansion modules that were built into the 357. So you can see here a comparison of some of the differences between these 2 RTUs. Again, the 474 is not intended to be a direct drop-in replacement to the 357 because of the number of different I/O types. The existing SCADAPack 32 to 474 is also compared here. We're using the 5601A lower expansion module here. There's a number of different expansion boards that were provided and can be provided with the SCADAPack 32. The SCADAPack 32 is still very much, along with the 350 and the 357, is still very much a supported and sold unit. It's some of our more popular RTUs that have been available for sale many years, and they still continue to be available. We're introducing this new series to provide customers that may be outgrowing the programming environment of these older RTUs to give them an alternative and a means of moving forward into the 21st century. We do have these terminal adapter kits that do allow a 474, for instance, to become a drop-in wiring replacement for some of our older SCADAPack 32 P4 variant or the SCADAPack P1 variants. So these devices possibly with the need to introduce a 5415 relay output module, depending upon the I/O mix. What you do is you pull off these gray beige looking connectors here from your existing RTU SCADAPack32, and you push them onto these terminal blocks here, and then the SCADAPack474 becomes a drop-in wiring replacement for these existing RTUs. Schneider have retired the SCADAPack100 RTU recently, so your alternative, if you're looking for an inexpensive, low I/O count, small footprint RTU, we will be directing you to look at the 470, because as I say, the SCADAPack100 and the less popular 330 are no longer available. You do get with this device support for expansion modules, more Ethernet ports, and more I/O in general on the board compared to the SCADAPack100, and support for up to 10 flow runs as well through the flow computer support, which was also, I think the SCADAPack100 just supported one gas run if necessary. Finally, we'll look at the 330 to the 470, not well used in the marketplace here in Canada, so it's not something that we're probably going to find people are going to be too concerned about. But the 330 was also made obsolete, and we would be definitely directing someone to look at the 470 if they're looking to utilize this small I/O count, small footprint RTU. Thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to ourselves at Cymark here, and have a good day.